Okay, so I want to be starting to go through some of, not the whole thing, of the Rambam's Guide to the Perplexed, Moreh Nevuchim. So this is the Chicago University of Chicago Press. There's 2 volumes to this. There's going to be links in the description for this. So according to a rabbi from the Orthodox Union, he claims that this is the best translation. It was originally written in Arabic. There are translations into Hebrew, translations into English. He says that this is the best one. Oddly, I don't understand why there's not much more attention to this particular text. This was like one of the best works of the Rambam. This is something he wrote late in his life, and I think that, so the people that say that the Rambam was actually a mystic, I think this book really speaks volumes to that, and I kind of wanted to highlight some of that stuff. But anyway, regardless, it will be a very good read. It's very informative and educational. He's a very good teacher. So basically, the idea is that he wrote this book for a student of his, Rabbi Yosef. I challenge the point that nothing is a coincidence, and that the Rambam, the great Gadol that he was influenced in such a way that his life is affecting generations. Just like they say, from Moshe to Moshe, right? There's not been any sage from like Moshe to Moshe, right? So from Moses to Moses Maimonides. I would venture to say that this so-called pupil that he's talking about is Mashiach ben Yosef, but all right. Well, anyway, it starts out. He's quoting a passage that's more or less from Isaiah 35, verse 8. It says, "My knowledge goes forth to point out the way, to pave straight its road. Lo, everyone who goes astray in the field of Torah, come and follow its path. The unclean and the fool shall not pass over it." They're not going to have a part in it. It should be called way of holiness. And it's kind of interesting because if you have to look at the rest of the passage in Isaiah 35. This is completely like a messianic message. And if you look back in Isaiah 34, preceding this as well, you'll see some interesting stuff as well. But if you go beyond this, all of a sudden you run into Hezekiah and the attack from the enemies and the salvation, the great salvation that happens, and just various things. It's a very messianic message. So I challenge that he wrote this knowing that Mashiach ben Yosef would have this as his guide. It starts out in the name of the Lord, God of the world. I think it was probably like Rabbono Shel Olam. It says the epistle dedicatory is this section. It says, "My honored pupil Rabbi Yosef, may the rock guard you," and we know who the rock is. "Son of Rabbi Yehuda, may his repose be in paradise. When you came to me, having conceived the intention of journeying from the country farthest away in order to read text under my guidance, I had a high opinion of you because of your strong desire for inquiry and because of what I had observed in your poems, of your powerful longing for speculative matters. This was the case since your letters and compositions in rhymed prose came to me from Alexandria, before your grasp was put to the test. I said, however, perhaps his longing is stronger than his grasp. When thereupon you read under my guidance text dealing with the science of astronomy, and prior to that text dealing with mathematics, which is necessary as an introduction to astronomy, my joy in you increased because of the excellence of your mind and the quickness of your grasp. I saw that your longing for mathematics was great, and hence I let you train yourself in that science, knowing where you would end. When thereupon you read under my guidance text dealing with the art of logic, my hopes fastened upon you, and I saw that you are one worthy to have the secrets of the prophetic books revealed to you, so that you would consider in them that which perfect man ought to consider. Thereupon I began to let you see certain flashes and to give you certain indications. Then I saw that you demanded of me additional knowledge, and asked me to make clear to you certain things pertaining to divine matters, to inform you of the intentions of the Mutakalimun, which are supposedly like Arabic scholars in this respect, and let you know whether their methods were demonstrative, and if not, what art they belonged. As I also saw you had already acquired some smattering of the subject from people other than myself. You were perplexed, as stupefaction had come over you. Your noble soul demanded of you to find out acceptable words. And I want to point out that if this is something that comes upon you, make sure that your diet of kashrut is without objection. Because that is something that purifies your mind and your body so that you can handle these subjects. And it's actually interesting. I've seen this in my life. You might know of a certain text, but at a certain point in your life, the text will come to you. And it will be like there's a wall up on this thing. There's a wall on this text. Just some text, let's just put it that way. And by the time you reach a certain age or a certain point in your life, that comes down, and it's like a rush. It's an inflow of almost like water, right? And it's almost like at that point you can actually penetrate it, and you can start to study it. And it's hard to explain, but this is the way it works. So, yet I did not cease dissuading you. Oh, and I want to also point out at the end of Isaiah 34, it actually speaks about the book of the Lord. So take that as you will, so you can read it yourself. Yet I did not cease dissuading you from this, and enjoining upon you to approach matters in an orderly manner. My purpose in this was that the truth should be established in your mind according to the proper methods, and that certainty should not come to you by accident. Whenever during your association with me a verse or some text of the sages was mentioned in which there was a pointer to some strange notion, I did not refrain from explaining it to you. Then when God decreed our separation and you betook yourself elsewhere, these meetings aroused in me a resolution that I had slackened. Your absence moved me to compose this treatise, which I have composed for you, and for those like you, however few they are. And I have set it down in dispersed chapters. All of them that are written down will reach you where you are, one after the other. Be in good health. And it says it will reach you. I find it interesting of the first section of this book, and I challenge you. So there's different parts, and we're going to see that the first section of this book has 50 chapters to it. And they're not like big chapters, but we'll just use the term chapters, but there's sections, right? And there's 50 of these. And I challenge you that these are related to the 50 gates of understanding, Sha'arei Bina. And it has to do with unlocking the biblical text based on words and concepts that are there. And then he goes on and he continues. And he claims that this book is something that you go through and cycle through in your life. And it's very interesting because some of the greatest mystics, this was their favorite book. The greatest mystics, this was their favorite book. And I posit that there are different schools of Kabbalah, there are different schools of Jewish mysticism, and he was of a different school than what later became popular. So the mystical school with the Kabbalistic tree of life and everything like that, those representations, those formulae, all that type of stuff, I think is a different school, and that he came from a more rational, prophetic school that others were involved in. But it is interesting, so I will point out that someone who really, it was absolutely his favorite book was Abulafia. And if you know anything about Avraham Abulafia, he actually spilled the secrets of Jewish mysticism himself, and he thought that he had this impression that he was fulfilling the messianic idea and that he was playing a role in the messianic age. And I do challenge people whenever you get to the prayer for redemption in the Shemona Esrei, to pray that you will be a part, that you will play a part in that final redemption, that you will play a part in that final geula, the bringing of the Messianic age, and anything that entails. And that's extremely important, that you pray that you have a part in that you play a part in that. So this is a book that you can continue to go through, and it will continue to elucidate things to you. And it's not to be taken necessarily in a linear fashion. And he even points out in here, in the introduction, that he didn't write this book for ignorant people. He wrote this book for people that had a level of wisdom and godliness. And he basically said, be what it may, if these people come to this book and they fall into it and come to erroneous conclusions, I didn't write it for them. I wrote it for the people that really need to hear it, is basically what he says. And this is why I think that this is connected to the Messianic age, and this is something that he really had to write down in a book fashion. Because he could have wrote a personal letter to that student, but he didn't. He wrote an entire book. He wrote an entire book and had it out there to the whole world. And we have to think about that, because he was such a great person. There's no way that you can say that God did not send special assistance along the way to help him and to guide him to do his actions, his books, his writing, his thoughts, and everything for future generations, repercussions, just like Moshe Rabbeinu, for generations to come, right? We remember him for good. We don't remember him for evil. We remember him for good, right? So that is the dedication of the book. So I'll have another video here for the introduction of the first part. So thanks for listening. Please continue to study with me.